Hello and welcome back to What Hannah Knits. Today I am going to be speaking all about my spring knitting plans, and I have a roundup of patterns for you that I would like to knit this spring. We are just moving into some more spring type weather here in the UK, so the past week has been a little bit warmer. We're still getting frost overnight, but particularly this week it has been very sunny. When I'm thinking about my spring knitting plans, I am of course thinking about the weather, which more often than not in the UK is on the colder side, and we do of course get lots of grey and wet weather here. So it isn't quite time to bust out those summer fibres yet, at least for me. I will be sticking mostly with those warm woolly yarns. Although the weather does of course get warmer in the spring, for me on a warmer spring day I would still need to wear a knitted layer. It just means that I don't have to wear my winter coat. Of course, with it being the UK, we can sometimes get a little glimpse of spring and the weather will get warmer, and then we can go straight back into winter weather for a few weeks, and we've even been known to get snow right up until April. So not time to bust out those summer fibres just yet, and there will certainly still be lots of days where I will need a winter coat and probably my knitted hat and mittens as well. So thinking about spring layers for these plans. That moves me nicely into what I'm wearing today, because this is a perfect spring layer. With it being a cardigan, you can of course open it, and it is a little bit of a looser gauge, although it is still nice and warm. So this for me would be the perfect spring layer to wear on a warmer day when I don't particularly need to wear my winter coat, but I still need something to keep me a little bit warmer. So this is the cardigan number 9 by My Favourite Things Knitwear, and I knit this in a DK weight strand of a 100% British wool that I purchased from a D-stash, and I held that with Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in the colour Fennel Seed. And it gives this really lovely mould fabric, which might not be to everybody's tastes, but I really enjoy this one. I do talk more about this in my regular podcast episodes, so if you would like to hear more about this, you can head over to those. I will link the episodes below where I talk about this garment specifically. Okay, so that's enough rambling for me about the British weather. We do love to talk about it here in the UK, definitely fitting into that stereotype. But let's move straight into my spring plans. So the way that I want to structure this, I want to start by talking about garments, and then I will move into accessories and socks. And for each category, I want to talk about them in order of priority, because there's definitely some items that are much higher priority and some that are more of wishful thinking type knits. So I'm going to start with garments, and more specifically sweaters. So first up on my spring plans is something that I have actually already cast on, and this is the Heart Chain Sweater by From Mayo. This is a really beautiful all over cabled dropped shoulder sweater, which features these really lovely panels of cables that are shaped like little hearts, and you have the big diamond cable in the middle. It's a very traditional looking sweater, but I really love the details with the 2x2 rib, and I really love the hearts as well, though those heart-shaped cables look really pretty. This pattern is knit at a worsted weight gauge, and it is 18 stitches per 23 rows in 10 centimetres for stockinette stitch. For the cabled pattern more specifically, the gauge is actually 36 stitches by 27 rows in 10 centimetres, so quite a little bit tighter, of course, accounting for those cables. This sweater comes in 5 sizes, and it ranges from 104 centimetres to 128 centimetres for the circumference. As I mentioned, I have already cast this on, so I will give you a quick look at how I'm getting on. So here she is. I'm just showing the back panel here, which I have completed. and I am now working on these front sections, and you can see those really beautiful cables here. My vision for this is for it to be really oversized and something that I can throw on as a top layer during the spring, over jeans and a t-shirt, maybe even over shorts and a t-shirt as the weather gets a little warmer. I'll talk very quickly about the yarn that I'm using for this one. So this is a yarn that I sourced from a motorway service station, a very, very random find, but it is a beautiful, beautiful yarn. So it is from the Westmoreland Farm Shop service station, and I purchased this from the Gloucester services. I talk lots more about my love for that particular motorway service station and this yarn in particular in my previous episodes, so you can head over there to hear more about it. But in a nutshell, it is spun from their own upland sheep, and it's spun in West Yorkshire. It is a DK weight yarn, and you get 200 meters. There's not any other information on the ball band other than that, but it does appear to be undyed. It's very sheepy, natural colour. It's extremely rustic. I would say it's more scratchy than a peer gynt, but I really, really enjoy a rustic yarn. I really like to try and look for yarns that are produced in the UK like this, that are an affordable price. This was only £5.50 for 100 grams, which was just unbelievable to me. I am quite lucky that I am not sensitive to wool, so I can wear rustic yarns like peer gynt next to skin with no issues, so I don't anticipate I'll have any issues with this one. The next sweater that I would really, really like to knit this spring is the Olga sweater by Petite Knit. This is an all-over striped sweater, and it is a dropped shoulder construction. This sweater is a DK weight sweater, and the gauge is 20 stitches per 30 rows for 10 centimetres. The sweater does come in 10 sizes, and the finished bust circumference ranges from 103 to 165 centimetres, and that is including around 23 centimetres of positive ease. So in true Petite Knit style, it's quite an oversized garment. Petite Knit knits her sample up in peer gynt, which is of course a really lovely Norwegian wool. It is more on the rustic side, but it is one of my favourite yarns to work with. However, I will not be using peer gynt to knit mine this time. I have some yarn that I actually purchased on eBay through another D-stash. This will be a running theme. If you have watched any of my videos before, you will know that I love to purchase yarn second hand. And I particularly like to find vintage yarns or yarns that were made in the UK. And this is a really, really exciting one, and I've had this sitting in stash for a while. So this is the yarn. Now this is Welsh mountain wool, and I purchased this on eBay, as I mentioned, and it was part of a pack from the Wales Craft Council. So this is the leaflet that came with the yarn. So you can see here, it's called the Welsh Touch. And it says here that it is purebred Welsh mountain and black Welsh mountain wool. It does come with a pattern as well. So this is the pattern, and that's the sweater that you can knit with the pattern. It doesn't have any information about when this was produced. Oh no, I'm telling a lie, it's 1986. But it's finally going to get made into a sweater, but it won't be this one. It's just not to my taste. There isn't any information about the meterage of this yarn or the weight. However, I did knit this up in a swatch when I received it last year. I knit it into stripes. I can't find it anywhere, but I do know that I knit it in the 4mm needle that is recommended for the Olga, and I hit the gauge of 20 stitches exactly. So this is absolutely perfect to knit that sweater. I should also show this as well. It comes with a really cute little fabric tag that you can sew into your finished garment, and it says the Welsh touch, guaranteed real Welsh, and it's got a little sheep on there. So I'll be sewing that into my finished garment. So let's just have another look at this yarn. It comes in 3 colours. So this is a really deep, almost chocolatey brown. This is a very light, creamy colour. It's a very cool toned cream actually, which is hard to come by, so I really enjoy that. And this one appears to be a mixture of the two. So I think together, striped up, this is going to look really, really nice. I really enjoy these colours. This is quite rustic. It's very sheepy. It's got that lovely sheepy smell. I really like it. My partner doesn't particularly like it when I smell like a sheep, but I enjoy the smell. And yes, it is rustic. I would say this is more rustic than a peer gynt. Again, I don't particularly find yarns like this to be overly scratchy. I think I've just become desensitized and almost a bit blind to it. But I know that if I held that against my partner's neck, he would say that is very scratchy. But I really enjoy it, and I think it's going to be one of those things that will stay in my wardrobe forever because it is such a rustic yarn. I think it's just going to be a workhorse piece that will hold up. And I just see myself wearing this in the spring on those days where I don't need a coat, but I just want to throw something over the top, walking the dog with my wellies on and just throwing this over the top of my dog walking clothes. I think it's going to be a real staple in my wardrobe. Okay, I have one more sweater to talk about, and this is the least priority for me, and it's quite wishful thinking. I doubt I will get around to knitting this spring, but I really would like to knit it at some point. And this is the Colette pullover by Sari Nordland. Now I do own this pattern, and I was going to knit it last spring with some different yarn, and then I changed my mind, and it has just been sitting in my pattern library waiting for me to get around to knitting it. So this is another dropped shoulder construction, and it is in all over cables, and the cable panels are broken up by rows of eyelets with garter stitch either side. So it's really going to be a very airy piece that would be really nice to wear in the spring. This pattern is knit up at a DK weight gauge of 19 stitches by 28 rows for 10 centimetres. And the pattern is knit in a fingering weight strand of wool with a lace weight mohair or silk mohair, and I would like to knit this in something similar if I do get around to knitting it this spring. Maybe a knitting for olive merino with a soft silk mohair. And I have my eye on the dusty banana colour. I believe that's what it's called. It's the dusty yellow colour. For some reason I'm feeling really drawn to those really light pastely yellow colours at the moment. So maybe that's something that I can get time to do this spring, or potentially it will be one for next time. Moving on now to cardigans, and my first priority in terms of cardigans is the April cardigan by Petite Knit. I have already made an April cardigan for myself. I knit this one up last spring, and I knit mine in a DK weight superwash yarn. And I have got a lot of wear out of this one, and I really enjoyed knitting this pattern up. However, as soon as I finished it, I really regretted not knitting it in something similar to what is recommended in the pattern, which is a fingering weight wool strand held with a lace weight mohair. So I've had this on my list since I finished my original April cardigan. I have wanted to knit it up in a different fibre choice, and I wanted to knit this in more of a beige colour as opposed to the grey colour which I went for my first April cardigan. So the April cardigan is a V-neck cardigan, and it is knit from the top down, and it has a contiguous sleeve construction, and you start with these small saddle shoulder portions here before you move into that contiguous sleeve construction. The April cardigan comes in 9 sizes, ranging from 91 to 150 centimetres, and the pattern recommends 6 to 8 centimetres of positive ease, so a little more fitted than Petite Knit's usual style. This is knit up at a DK weight gauge with a gauge of 21 stitches per 28 rows for 10 centimetres. So let's talk about the yarn that I will be using, because I do already have this in stash. So for the 4-ply fingering weight strand, I will be using Tin Peer Gint. This is a 100% Norwegian wool, and it is of course the fingering weight version of Peer Gint, and you do get 205 meters per 50 grams with this one. So this is what the colour looks like, and this is called Beige Melange, I want to say. I'll pop that up on the screen if I'm wrong, but the number is 2650. So I'm going to be holding that with Tin Silk Mohair, also from Sanders Garn, and this is a 57% mohair, 28% silk and 15% wool blend. I've not used this before, and it's a little different to the mohairs that I have used before, because I usually go for a silk mohair blend. This one of course has the wool in there as well, so I'm really interested to see how much of a difference that makes to how this knits up. And you get 212 meters per 25 grams, so pretty standard for a lace weight mohair strand. This is in the shade, I can't remember, it's one of their tweed shades. I have the shade number here, which is 2600, but I can't remember the name, so I'll pop that up on screen. But it's pretty much an exact match to the Beige Melange, apart from it does have these tweed specks running through it. So I think that that's going to make a really, really lovely fabric knit up together. I see this becoming quite a staple in my wardrobe, particularly for my work wardrobe when I'm going into the office. So quite often when I'm getting dressed on my office days, I wish that I had this garment, because I have quite a lot of outfits that I wear to work that I feel that this would work really well with. So it's one of those items that I'm not particularly looking forward to the process of knitting it, because I've already knit the pattern. So I find it quite hard to get excited about knitting a pattern that I've already made. That being said, I know from experience that this one knits up really, really quick, because it is just plain stockinette and it's quite a simple, easy construction. But I am more so excited about actually having the finished garment, because I know that I'm going to get lots of wear out of this one. Next up, I want to talk about the Marseille cardigan, and this is the design by Cheryl Mokhtari. This is a really beautiful striped cardigan. It gives very nautical sailor type vibes, and it is a contiguous sleeve construction if I am remembering correctly. This is knit up at a DK weight gauge, and it is 20 stitches per 30 rows for 10 centimetres. This cardigan does come in 11 sizes, and the finished circumference ranges from 93 to 168 centimetres. And the designer recommends 18 centimetres of positive ease. So quite oversized, but not too much. I think this will be a nice in-between for me, because I do tend to lean towards those more oversized garments. Anywhere between 25 to 35 is what I tend to go for, because I really do like that oversized look. But sometimes it's nicer to have something that does feel a little more tailored. So I do already have the yarn in stash, which I would like to use for this cardigan. This is left over from my Albertville 1992 ski sweater, And this is the Holstgarn Super Soft yarn. It's a light fingering weight yarn, and it is sort of on the rustic side. It definitely isn't super soft as it would suggest. It's not like merino soft. So I have this in the colour indigo and the colour bleached white, and as you can see I have maybe half a cone of this and well over half a cone of this colour. So I've weighed it up and I definitely have enough to knit this cardigan, and I would need to hold it double to get that DK weight gauge. So I'd need to do a gauge swatch just to double check the needle size and that I can hit the gauge, but I'm pretty sure that this would be okay because this really does bloom when you wet block it. Now, to throw a bit of a spanner in the works, there has recently been another pattern released that has really caught my eye, and this yarn has sprung to mind for that particular pattern. This is the Lane Loops sweater by Other Loops, and it's a really beautiful striped sweater that alternates stripes with eyelet rows. And I envision this in these yarns but held with a lace weight strand. So maybe the alpaca lace weight strand from Holstgarn, which is called Titicaca. So the Titicaca is a alpaca lace weight strand which Holstgarn carry, and I've checked the website and they do have a navy blue and a off-white colour which would match. So I could order them and do that one instead. But I did really want the Marseille cardigan because I've seen an outfit on Pinterest with something that looks very similar, and I think it could fit into my wardrobe well. So I just need to weigh up my options on that one, and maybe the Lane Loop sweater is something that I put off for later in the year and purchase some new yarn. But I could get carried away and just order the alpaca for this. Let me know, what do you think? What would be better with this yarn? The Marseille cardigan or the Lane Loop sweater by Other Loops? Now let's move on to knitted tees. I think spring is probably the perfect time for a knitted tee. And I actually don't own any knitted tees in a woolen fibre. I've knit the Tolster tee in a cotton, but I'd quite like to have a tee that is in a warmer weather fibre because I think it could be something that I would wear quite a lot in the springtime. So next up is something a little bit different for me in terms of the way that I like to knit. So of course I usually knit from patterns that have been designed and all I need to do is follow the instructions. However, there is a particular knitted t-shirt slash cardigan that I keep seeing on Pinterest that I am absolutely obsessed with. It's this really oversized cardigan with t-shirt length sleeves. It has no shaping to it at all. It's sort of dropped shoulder, very simple with no finishings at all on the sleeves and the body. And it just looks so effortless and like something that would really fit into my wardrobe through spring and even into summer. I can't find a pattern that really is giving me what it needs to give in terms of what I'm envisioning for this, because I really want that particular look. So because it is quite simple, I've decided that this is something that I can self-draft. And I do have some yarn in stash. So I have here Drops Air in the colour light beige. And this is an Aran weight blown yarn. I can't remember the fibre content for this one, but I believe it has a lot of alpaca in there because it is extremely soft. It feels like a cloud. And I want to hold that with Drops Kid Silk Mohair in the colour light beige, just to give it a little bit more integrity and to help this blown yarn hold up a little bit more. Because it is so soft, I imagine it's going to be very, very pilly. So I've knit up a little swatch here. I knit this on 5.5mm needles and I really enjoy the fabric. And I've started to do some of the maths I've decided that I want this to have between 27 to 30 centimetres of positive ease, so quite a lot of positive ease. And I'm just going to do a basic top down dropped shoulder construction. So I'm going to cast on at the back and work some short rows to shape the shoulders, to have some sloped shoulder shaping, and then of course pick up for the front panels and knit back and forth for the body, because it is technically a cardigan, although I envision myself wearing it buttoned up as more of a t-shirt. So I'm going to give it a go, watch this space. I really want this to work because I really imagine me wearing that finished object quite a lot. There are also 2 t-shirt patterns by Lily Kate France that I just cannot decide between. The first pattern is the Feels Right tee, and this is a very beautiful tailored t-shirt, and it just looks like the perfect basic. I don't really know how else to describe this other than that it looks like the perfect sort of standard t-shirt, and it looks like perfectly fitted. From reading the pattern description, I think there's lots of short rows included to really give a really nice fit around the sleeve caps. It is knit up in a fingering weight yarn at a gauge of 26 stitches by 34 rows for 10 centimetres. This pattern comes in 9 sizes, and the finished bust circumference ranges from 82 centimetres to 162 centimetres, and I believe there is a small amount of positive ease written in to those sizes. The other pattern, and this is where I can't decide between the two, is the Brightest tee. Now, this is more of a fitted t-shirt. It has negative ease and it has eyelet details down the waist here, which look really pretty. And it has little capped sleeves, and there's also an option to knit a more substantial sort of typical t-shirt sleeve. And I think that's the option that I would go for. And this has more of like a sweeping neckline, if that's what you would call it. It sort of sweeps across here. Again, this is knitted at a fingering weight gauge of 26 stitches by 36 rows for this one. And it does come again in 9 sizes. Those sizes range from 66 centimetres to 147 centimetres. And those sizes do have the negative ease built in. So I just can't decide which of these I want to knit. I do own the pattern for the Brightest tee because I purchased that in a pattern sale that Lily Kate France was having just before Christmas. So maybe that's what will sway it, because I really can't decide. I do also have yarn in stash that I would like to use to knit one of these tees. This is actually a sock yarn, and this is the Merino Sock by Yarn Smiths. Yarn Smiths is Wool Warehouse's own brand, and they of course have their own sock yarn. This is a standard 75% merino wool and 25% nylon blend, and it is superwash treated. And in here you do get 400 meters. And I have 3 of these, and this is in the colour Parchment. So I've got 300 grams of this, so more than enough to knit either of those tees. And I think it's a really nice colour for a basic tee. So I just need to decide which of those I want to knit. If anyone has experience in knitting either of those patterns, let me know. The final t-shirt that I want to speak about is the Lakes tee, and this is a pattern by Ozetta. This is another fingering weight garment, and it is knit at a gauge of 26 stitches by 40 rows in 10 centimetres. And this does come in 9 sizes. Those sizes range from 90 to 165 centimetres. This t-shirt is a saddle shoulder construction with positive ease, and I think it's something that would be a real staple in my wardrobe. I really enjoy, as you can see, this saddle shoulder construction, and it's something that I want to incorporate more of into my wardrobe. Again, I do have yarn for this one, and this is another thrifted yarn that I purchased actually from a local charity shop. It is very, very vintage, so I'm hoping that when I get to winding this into cakes that there are no breaks in this. There doesn't appear to be. Here we go. This is tulip wool, and it is 100% pure wool made in England. Let me hold this up here so you can see, hopefully, what that looks like. You can see very, very vintage. And all it says is 100% pure wool made in England. The sign of quality, Charles Sykes. I did some Googling about this, and this is very, very vintage. I can't remember the exact year, but I will pop it on the screen. It's quite a while ago that I did the research into this because it's been sitting in my stash for nearly a year. But it appears that it was originally designed to knit socks from, and it is a fingering weight gauge. I can't find any information about the meterage, so I'm just going to assume it is a standard fingering weight meterage, so maybe around 400 meters per 100 grams. I have 2 of these hanks and they are each just over 100 grams. So I should have just enough to knit the Lakes tee if I crop it slightly and maybe crop the sleeves slightly. I should have enough, but we shall see. If anyone has come across this yarn before and knows any more information about it, please do let me know. I am so intrigued by it. As you can see, it's a navy blue colour and it's twisted in with a sort of grey blue colour. So there's 2 strands twisted together there. So I'm really intrigued to see how this knits up and what it will look like. So as I say, that's been sitting in stash for nearly a year now, so I'm quite keen to knit this up. But because it seems quite special, because it's so old, I want to make sure that I am 100% sure with what I want to make out of this, because I want to make sure it's something that I will wear. Next, I want to talk about socks. So the first pair of socks I want to talk about is from the Afternoon Tea sock set by Carly Perrins. And I also just want to mention about this designer in particular. I recently discovered her designs, and if you are into sock knitting, you need to look at her designs. She does mostly sock sets where you get 3 patterns included. And for each of her sock sets, you can purchase the cuff down or the toe up version, which I just thought was genius because obviously people do have their preferences, whether they prefer toe up or cuff down. And the main draw for me of these patterns is they are just so, so beautiful. I want to knit all of her designs, but I landed on the Afternoon Tea sock set because I was particularly drawn to one pair, which I have already cast on. It's looking a little odd, but I have finished the leg and I'm working on the slipped stitch heel flap, and I'm just about to go into the heel turn here. So in this pattern, I really enjoy the way that the designer has broken the socks down. She gives you, first of all, the 3 different cuffs. So you have a cuff library. So there is a ruffle cuff, a twisted rib cuff, and a picot edge. So you pick your cuff and you knit that. You then move into, of course, the sock portion, and then she gives you the 3 options for the sock. So you can mix and match to create your own Afternoon Tea sock. So for this one, I have gone for the ruffle cuff. So you start with knitting 1 by 1 rib, which is folded down. So you have a double thickness cuff here. And the ruffle is actually added on at the end. Once you finish the sock, you go in and pick up the stitches to knit that ruffle. For the actual sock itself, I have gone for the cake and pastry pattern. So this is a really pretty cabled pattern with eyelet details there as well. And I've gone for a very short leg because I was really inspired by the sample photo. I am knitting mine in West Yorkshire Spinners. This is the signature sock yarn, and this is in the colour Cayenne Pepper. From this sock set, I would also like to knit the Tea Leaves sock, which is another really pretty stitch pattern, and I will perhaps go for the picot edge cuff on this one. And I think I will knit it up in this yarn. This is the Regia 4-ply, and this colour is the colour 02070. I don't know the actual name, but that is the shade number. And it's a brownie beige colour, which I think will be really pretty for another pair of lacy cabled socks. For my sock plans, I would also like to knit the Strawberry Lemonade socks. This is a free Ravelry download, and it is by Crocheted by Berguzia. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, but apologies if not. So as I said, this is a free pattern to download on Ravelry. In the pattern description, the designer states that this is more of a guideline than a pattern, which is why it is free. I had a quick flick through the pattern and it seems to be quite substantial. There doesn't seem to be any information missing there, but just bear that in mind that the designer does state that it is more of a guideline, so it's probably not a hold your hand step-by-step pattern. I've just realised I'm waving this around. This is the yarn, which we'll get to, but let's talk a little more about the pattern itself. So the pattern has a panel of colour work where you have little strawberries or lemons, and that is on the leg of the sock. And then as you move through the rest of the sock after that colour work portion, it is made up of Bavarian twisted stitches, which I haven't heard of before and I don't think I've worked before, but that's what is stated in the pattern, that it is a Bavarian twisted stitch pattern. And it's really pretty. It almost looks like a wavy cable is how I would describe it. So I'd really like to work these up just to see how that texture is made. And I think the finished socks would be really, really cute. So this is of course the yarn that I have selected from it's got my hair on it, that I have selected from my sock stash. This is Drops for Belle in the colour 102, and it's a very bright pinky purple colour. So I think with the strawberry pattern that would look really, really cute. And then I would just get some of my plain white sock yarn from stash, which I will have lurking somewhere to form that colourwork section as well. Finally, I would like to talk about an accessory. I would really like to have a little scarf in my wardrobe that I can just throw on with a neutral outfit. And the one that's been catching my eye is the Poet Scarf by Sari Nordland. This is knit up at a DK weight gauge of 23 stitches per 30 rows, and it is a triangular shaped mini scarf with a really pretty texture pattern across there. So I would really like to have this in my wardrobe, maybe in a brighter coloured yarn. I'm sure I have something in my stash that I could whip out to quickly knit this one up. And this pattern does just come in the one size. Hello. I am currently sitting here editing this video and I am just realising that I didn't film an outro section. I actually filmed this directly after my previous podcast episode because I was trying to get organised and get ahead of myself. But obviously by the time I got to the end of speaking through these plans, I think my head was just completely frazzled and I had forgotten that I needed to do an outro for this video. So if you have made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below if you have made your spring knitting plans. Are you planning anything specific for your spring knitting? I would love to hear all about it. Of course, I will link all of the patterns and the yarns that I have spoken about in the description box down below if you are interested in checking any of them out. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.